Throughout history, Native Americans have often been portrayed in simplistic and inaccurate ways. Frequently, they are depicted either as defenseless victims of colonization or as uncivilized savages. However, this view fails to capture the reality of their strategic and military capabilities. In truth, Native Americans were highly intelligent, courageous, and powerful warriors with innovative and revolutionary warfare tactics. Over time, these tactics have been studied and adopted by modern military forces, guerrilla groups, and even police units around the world, and they remain influential to this day. When it comes to indigenous combat, popular imagery tends to reduce it to bows and arrows, ambushes, and brutality, but this perspective couldn't be farther from the truth. Native Americans were incredibly skilled strategists who swiftly absorbed and adapted European colonists' technologies and tactics, constantly seeking more effective ways to fight back. Indigenous combat strategies closely resembled modern guerrilla warfare, evolving over centuries as enemies and challenges shifted. Different tribes faced different enemies, yet many Native Americans were technically superior in combat, allowing them to resist, even when technologically disadvantaged. Confronted with better-armed enemies, Native Americans had to change their warfare strategies to avoid being wiped out. For them, war was not just a matter of conquest or defending territory. It was a struggle for the survival of their people, culture, and beliefs. Extermination didn't only mean the physical loss of lives, but also the complete disappearance of a way of life. Losing a battle could mean the destruction of an entire tribe, which led them to develop unique and effective combat methods. Before the arrival of Europeans, wars between Native American tribes were generally short and small-scale. Though frequent and brutal, these battles had clear objectives: avenging the death of a family member, capturing prisoners, obtaining spoils, or gaining prestige within the tribe. With the arrival of colonists, however, these confrontations took on a new dimension, becoming wars of survival. Tribes that once fought against each other began to unite or adapt their strategies to fight the colonists, who brought with them advanced weapons and warfare tactics. The wars against the settlers lasted into the late 19th century and were a matter of life and death for many tribes. Natives quickly realized that the large-scale battles and prolonged campaigns favored by Europeans were very different from their own combat tactics. While the settlers preferred to face their enemies in open fields and long campaigns until the opponent was utterly defeated, Native Americans developed an approach known as small warfare. This tactic consisted of quick, precise attacks, using the terrain and environmental conditions to their advantage. They conducted offensives at strategic times of the day, often at dawn or dusk, when darkness helped them surround the enemy, attacking with surprise in the first light or the twilight. This style of combat was highly pragmatic, allowing them to inflict significant damage on their enemies while minimizing their own losses. A key feature of native tactics was mobility and environmental adaptation. Unlike the Europeans, who relied on large armies and well-defined battlefields, Native Americans used geography to their advantage, hiding in dense forests, valleys, and mountains. They knew the terrain like no one else, which gave them a tremendous advantage. Their attacks were quick and organized, and when necessary, they would quickly withdraw to avoid prolonged losses in unnecessary battles. To them, long battles were seen as a waste of resources, as the same objectives could be achieved with shorter, more efficient attacks. They also used the tactic of encircling the enemy, but always left escape routes open to end the battle swiftly, without prolonging the conflict unnecessarily. Settlers often underestimated these tactics, thinking of the natives as undisciplined and cowardly. This perception arose because natives did not behave like European troops, who fought as a cohesive, rigid unit. Instead, native warriors fought with great individual freedom. Each warrior had the autonomy to act as he saw fit, which did not mean a lack of discipline, but rather a sophisticated tactic that allowed the most skilled to stand out and gain prestige within the tribe. This chaotic style of combat worked in favor of the natives against the settlers, who struggled to cope with such flexibility. Besides individual freedom, Native Americans developed highly effective communication systems to coordinate their troops on the battlefield. They used different war cries, whistles, horns, and calls to transmit orders. It is even said that the legendary warrior Crazy Horse used mirrors to communicate with his warriors over long distances. This demonstrates the sophistication and organization of the natives, who understood that communication was crucial in their ambush and surprise attack tactics. Native Americans were also exceptional horse riders, but their cavalry tactics were very different from European ones. Rather than following rigid formations, they attacked in chaotic and unpredictable ways, disrupting enemy formations and rendering them ineffective. For European settlers used to a more disciplined type of combat, this was difficult to understand and counter. Many colonists, trained in European military traditions, did not grasp the values and culture of the natives, which further increased the difficulty of dealing with their attacks. Native warriors did not view retreat as cowardice. Often, retreat was part of a larger plan, a trap to lure the enemy into an area where they held a tactical advantage. A classic example of this tactic was used by Crazy Horse, who deliberately drew American General George Crook and his troops into a closed valley, where they were ambushed by 1,500 native warriors, resulting in a massacre. Beyond their military tactics, Native Americans used psychological warfare to destabilize their enemies. The practice of scalping, for instance, was a way to terrorize settlers. Scalping fallen enemies held deep cultural significance for natives, but also served to instill fear in their adversaries. The sight of a comrade being scalped or the sounds of pain accompanying these acts were brutal reminders that natives were formidable opponents. Even with superior weapons, colonial and American forces took time to understand native tactics. Native Americans, on the other hand, learned to use firearms relatively quickly, but still depended on settlers for gunpowder supplies, limiting their ability to resist in prolonged wars. As a result, they continued to use rudimentary weapons such as bows and arrows, tomahawks, and spears, but adapted these tools to their stealthy style of combat. By the late 19th century, most native tribes had either been exterminated or confined to reservations. However, Native American guerrilla tactics left an indelible mark on military history. These tactics directly influenced the development of modern military strategies, especially those used by guerrilla forces and revolutionary groups around the world, like the Viet Cong during the Vietnam War and guerrilla fighters in Latin America. The effectiveness of Native American tactics was so remarkable that General George Marshall, during World War II, recommended that their strategies be studied and incorporated into modern warfare. He believed that the wisdom and ingenuity of the natives could be the key to defeating the Japanese. In the end, the history of Native Americans is a testament to their intelligence, bravery, and strategic capabilities. They were not simply victims or savages, as they are often portrayed, but ingenious warriors whose tactics continue to influence modern warfare. Subscribe to the channel and activate notifications so you don't miss any videos.
See you next time.